I'm Dean Newlund, and welcome to the Business of Intuition, where I coach, facilitate, train, and speak on the hard science and meaningful experience of intuitive leadership in business, so you can make better decisions, forge real connections, and creatively solve problems to amplify your impact and simplify your life. Welcome to the Business of Intuition. CEOs, visionary leaders, entrepreneurs, and those hard-driving type A personalities push for large-scale change all the time. But when these masters of change see a brighter future, they sometimes miss the subtle, consistent, small efforts that take place each day that over time create impressive results. They become blind to those tiny improvements. And like the Chinese phrase says, the journey of 100 miles begins with a single step. And therefore, the goal should be to improve even a little each day. My next guest on the Business of Intuition has been around the block more than once. He believes that we should bring humanity back into business by clarifying those behaviors that make teams and companies successful, celebrating the small, not just the large wins, and being generous with our respect, care, and desire to help everyone become their best selves. My next guest is Jay Steinfeld. Jay is the Wall Street Journal's best-selling author of Lead from the Core, The 4 Principles for Profit and Prosperity. He is an Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year and has earned a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Houston Technology Center. Active as an industry speaker on topics including corporate culture, core values, how to scale a startup, and distribution, he has more than 100 published articles and writes a column for Inc. magazine. Jay founded and was the CEO of Blinds.com, the world's #1 online window covering retailer. Bootstrapped in 1996 with just $3,000 from his Bel Air, Texas garage, Blinds.com was acquired by the Home Depot in 2014. Jay remained as its CEO and later joined the Home Depot online leadership team. After stepping away from these roles in early 2020, he began teaching entrepreneurship at Rice University's Jones Graduate School of Business and has increased his involvement on numerous private company boards and serves as a director of the public company Masonite. He also supports numerous charities. Jay Steinfeld on the Business of Intuition. So Jay, it's great having you on the show. I wanted to start off with a question that you had sort of made me think about before we started this conversation, before I hit the record button, which you said something about business can be counterintuitive. And obviously the show's name is The Business of Intuition. So I want to start off with, how is business counterintuitive, and specifically in this area around generosity? Because obviously companies spend a lot of time working on revenue, they spend a lot of time on cost cutting, and somehow those two actions are what we sometimes would consider the way to be successful. So could you kind of give me your thoughts on generosity and why it might feel to some counterintuitive?
Well, not only does it feel counterintuitive to people, it feels warm and fuzzy, and people don't like that either. Counterintuitive in terms of generosity means it's not about giving more money. It's about giving more respect. It's about bringing humanity back into the business. That's what I'm talking about. A lot of people think that what you need to do to succeed in business is to spend as little as possible and give away as little as you can get away with, and you'll make more money. Well, the counterintuitive aspect of that is it's better to give as much as you can away, because you will actually get people more loyal, more satisfied. And that goes with not just your customers, it's especially true with your employees. So what that doesn't mean is giving them untold amounts of money, although I do believe you shouldn't cap compensation. I think there shouldn't be limits on compensation. If a person's doing an amazing job, selling an amazing number, they should make an amazing amount of money. But again, it's not about money. What is it about then? It's about information. It's about giving an abundant amount of information that's about what the company is doing, where they play a part, how they can get better in that part, what role they play, what resources you can give them to do a better job, questions you can ask people to say, not only this is what I want from you, but what do you want from me? What do you want to do with your life? Even if it's not here at the company. I've had plenty of people who worked at blinds.com say, I thought I was only going to work here for a year or two, and they end up working 15 years because they found themselves getting better with us than they would be on their own. The purpose of our company was to help people become better than what they ever believed possible. That was actually the purpose of the company. So when people feel that you really do care about them and you want them to succeed and you want them to achieve their goals as well as your own, that's a form of generosity. And people will stay longer when you know what their goals are. So if they say, for instance, Jay, in 5 years, I want to start my own company. Great. Some people would go, what? The person wants to leave? Well, of course, there's a lot of people who want to do things like that. So why not help them get there? And in 5 years, you now have this person who is doing what they want because they were going to leave anyway. And by you getting that information from them, you're helping them get there. And if you hadn't asked, they leave, you wonder why they left. And in the meantime, those 5 years, you didn't get as much as you could have from them.
How do you get that's a great thing you said. It's sort of a taboo, when you ever sit down, you have an interview with somebody where you're having your annual review and you're being asked, well, so what do you want to do at our company? And, the stock line is, well, I want to be here forever. I want to be here for a long time. I mean, I want to say an answer to you that indicates that I'm loyal. But in fact, maybe I want to only be here for 5 years because I want to learn some skills and go on to another industry or to start my own business. How do you ask that question so that people tell you the truth?
Well, yes, that's a great question, Dean. First of all, it starts with the foundational fact that they believe that you really do care about them. Because if you don't have that trust, you can ask the question however you want, and they're not going to give you the truth. So if they fundamentally believe that you really do care, you'll get it no matter how you ask it, because you might stumble through it. But you just ask, okay, you're doing a great job here, but what are your personal goals? In 5 years, where do you want to be? You just ask it directly. It's not a trick question.
Yeah. So you'd said that you obviously did great work with your company and then sold it to, if I may understand correctly, Home Depot. Was that right?
Yeah.
Okay. And then
Blinds.com in 2014 sold it and actually stayed on for 7 years after selling it to Home Depot in 2014.
Yeah, we were one of your customers back then. I remember working with you guys. We were getting our house set up with blinds, and we went to you guys. We worked with you a lot.
Appreciate it.
So it was great to connect with you on that. How did the culture change or stay the same once it moved over under the parent company called Home Depot? Did it maintain that level of generosity that you spent so much time building? Or did the culture all of a sudden become very different? Or did Home Depot's culture become different as a result of the work that you did? How did that whole process work out?
Well, first, let's be clear. Home Depot at the time was doing about $80 billion. And now they're doing about $140 billion with 500,000 people.
Yeah.
And we were doing 115 million with 175 people. So how much effect could we have on Home Depot?
Right.
Well, we actually did. We actually did have an effect. It was awesome. Our technology is being used throughout the company, through the 2,200 stores. The decorating that we did, they're using the same decorating scheme. Some of the things that we did from a technology or even the way we built technology is being used in the IT department at Home Depot. So we were making some difference. It was like really, Home Depot was this giant vat of water, and we were maybe this magic drop. And you put this one little drop of water in there that's tinted, and it tints the water a little bit. So we were making some difference, but not particularly huge amount. The culture for us was about people intimacy. It was about really caring about the people, as I had mentioned a little bit earlier. And fundamentally, there were 4 things. It was about experimenting, about evolving, expressing ourselves, and having fun. Now, that's kind of hard to evaporate just because you get purchased by another company when you want to have fun and you want to express yourself and you're evolving and experimenting. Home Depot was smart because they told me big companies have a habit of just squashing little companies when they buy them. Mm-hmm. So if we do anything that's going to somehow unintentionally destroy you, speak up and let us know. Well, one of my core values is to speak up. So that was an easy one. And I did. And there were all sorts of things that they were doing that seemingly would be smart to do, ways to integrate compensation programs that might have not been consistent with the way they did it, titles. But every time they do one of these things, which really would have caused us to basically evaporate, we would speak up. So the culture actually remained. We have still those 4 core values, and Home Depot has their 8 core values, and we coexist. We just understood that Home Depot was more about operational efficiency, and we were more about customer intimacy. And we then understood each other's love language of business and didn't try to change the love language of the other person, of the other organization. And we just coexisted, respecting what each brought to the table. Not that Home Depot doesn't care about people, but primarily it's about organizational efficiency. And we were primarily not about organizational efficiency. And we both learned how to get better from each other and accept who we are. And
that's fascinating.
By the way, we were hitting our numbers. So as long as you hit your numbers, you can pretty much do whatever you want.
Yeah, leave us alone. We're doing fine.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, because there is always a sense that a smaller organization gets gobbled up by the bigger one, and the culture then overlays that new, smaller company. You're saying that you basically, I like the phrase, you respected each other's love language. So long as you were making your numbers, it was fine. You could continue on with the kind of culture that you had and coexist within this larger structure of Home Depot, which is great.
We didn't want to homogenize the company and lose the value that the whole reason they bought us was we were kicking their butt and we were kicking everybody's butt. So what was it that allowed us with so few people and so little money to do it? And it was the culture. So as long as we kept doing it and keep adding value, why would you change that? And they were smart enough not to.
Well, let's try another scenario on this, because you mentioned the word culture, and I'm really fascinated by that. Let's say you've got a company that culture is not very strong. Maybe it's an equal size. Let's just say, I don't know, call it $3 or $4 billion, and another company is thinking about merging with them, equal size, but their culture is actually quite strong. But they're going to come together in some form, one way or another. How does the stronger culture create a unified culture when you're bringing in one that's weaker?
I think it has to do with expectations. In a situation where there is an ambiguous culture and nobody really knows what it is, well, what is there to keep? Why would you keep something that nobody understands? You either figure it out and define it succinctly and clearly, and then determine whether it should be maintained, or you just let it go. And the stronger culture, that's the one that must prevail. I can't imagine that you have the strong culture in another company that has every company has a culture, right? Whether it's intended or not.
Right.
But if it's not clearly defined and people don't know what behaviors they should have and what the expectations are, then there's nothing to keep because it's too ambiguous. So I would say the clear culture has to prevail in that situation. And those people who cannot or will not behave that way shouldn't be there. They should leave.
Yeah, we've always thought that culture was defined loosely as how things get done, fueled by vision, process, and behavior. And that it kept this sort of the behavior side of the equation, which is sort of the softer side of business, if you will, but linking it to the work that we actually do, that it's the combination of those two things. How do you define
that
culture?
Makes sense. But how do I define culture?
Yeah.
I think it's the expected behaviors, because ultimately the culture is what people do.
Right.
And what is allowed and what is disallowed. And when that's clear, that we will not allow anybody in our culture to be stagnant. It's not just that stagnation is boring and may cause people to leave. Our culture is that everybody will improve and help everybody else around us improve every day. In fact, throughout the day. This is not something like every year you think about, how am I going to improve? You think, I just had this meeting with Dean and I don't think that went well. I wonder why that is. How can I have improved that interaction with that meeting? What did I do wrong? What could I have done better if I had a chance to do it again? That's a culture that says, I'm going to take responsibility and accountability for improving myself and improving Dean. And Dean is going to do the same thing. And when you have people who are doing these things, the behaviors of helping each other, of evolving, you have autonomous excellence. The business is getting better automatically. And you as a leader have the easiest time because you just sit back and watch. You've established an environment of a behavior, of a culture, of evolution required. That is the behavior that is expected. And you provide the personal development and the tools and the resources to help people. You just don't say it, but that's the culture. You mentioned processes before, Dean, about that being part of it and the vision. Our vision is to help people become better than they ever believed possible. We're going to provide the processes and the tools and the resources to help them get that. We're going to help people express themselves and tell us how they want to get better. We're going to tell them what we really think too, in a candid, respected way, to help people become the best they can be. It's all about really clear language, clear expectations, and clear behavior, what is good and what is not good. And if you've got people who are performing well on their metrics, but somehow are not aligned with the culture, those people have to leave. There are many times when we had people who were misaligned with our culture, and because it's so important, we had to let them go. It's like, wow, you just got rid of one of your top salespeople. Well, that culture is not what we want. And we can't let one person, even if their numbers are good, stay, because what is it telling everybody else? That all these things we said about culture really was BS. We really, as long as you're hitting your numbers and you're doing well, just kidding. We really didn't mean it, but we do mean it, because in the end, everybody is going to get better as a result of that.
So I love the way you're speaking about this, Jay. I'm really on board with this. You got me at hello, as they say. Developing the behaviors and the definitions, those expectations, in some ways, in my mind, is the easy part. However, that one of those behaviors needs to be accountability. That we mean what we say, that if the behaviors are not met after coaching, mentoring, and so forth, and we've worked with you, that you may have to leave the company. Your top salesperson may have to go because they're not following the core behaviors that you've set out. What I find, and I'm curious what you think, is that that's where culture sometimes falls down, is when we don't hold people to those expectations. So it's great saying it. We can behave it to some degree, but when somebody doesn't, how then do we then hold them accountable to the things that they all agreed and helped to create? So what's your thought about this whole idea about accountability, crucial conversations, making sure that we walk the talk?
Well, that's why I said it's not about what you say, but it's what you do, and why it's all about behavior.
Yeah, okay.
You get people to do it when you actually take action. When that person is no longer there and everybody says, wait, she's not here anymore? And everybody knows, oh, yeah, they meant that. Or when we talk about accountability for time, well, if people keep showing up late, it's not their fault. It's your fault because you let them get by with it more than once. It's you're the problem, not them. So if you tell people in orientation, we start meetings on time, not a minute late. If the meeting starts at 10, we start at 10. And if you get in late, we're not going to repeat anything. And when you get there, and so you start your meetings on time. And if you don't start them on time, then it doesn't matter what you say. It's
Right.
all about setting expectations about what the behavior should be, how our processes are going to be, but doesn't mean that you're not open to feedback. Because if you want to get better, you have to continue to change. And you want people who are actually doing the work to tell you new hypotheses they think of, or new ideas, or contra information about things that you thought were good ideas, but they're saying, you know what, I've been doing this for a month, and that was a bad idea. Let me tell you what you didn't consider. And if you're really interested in evolving and getting better, you'll listen, and you'll listen to that employee, and you'll hear them, and you'll do something about it, and you'll thank them, because now you're getting the best information you could possibly get. This is a person who is doing what you said, and it's not working. Now, if it's just one person, maybe they weren't doing it right. Maybe you didn't train them right. Maybe there's a lot about you that you put them in the wrong spot. They're not really capable of doing it, or the system is wrong. That's another part of generosity that we talked about. It's not necessarily their fault. In fact, it probably isn't. It's probably your fault. And that's a generous thing to be thinking first, that it's probably your fault.
Would you assume that first? Is that
assume
the first place to look?
Yes.
Yeah.
The first thing you should do is think, okay, what part did I play in this person not being effective?
Yes.
Did I hire wrong? Did I put him in the wrong role? Did I not give him the right resources? Did I give him correct expectations? Did I not tell him about the core value of this, this, and this?
Yes.
So that's the first thing. Or is the system broken and nobody could have done that well?
Right. You talk about this system. I want to take a quick pivot here.
Okay.
So we've been sort of speaking in this larger organization, I don't know, context, if you will, and creating cultures and so forth. Let's take a quick pivot and go, all right, I'm a startup, brand new, getting this thing off the ground. And you've been through this before.
Yeah.
Why is not knowing something an asset?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, first of all, you'll never know everything. You have to understand that when you start a business, and I teach in the business school at Rice, and these are super smart people who are used to getting A's on like all their tests and achieving everything. They're like superhuman beings. And that is a detriment because they think they have to understand all the facts and get all the right information and get a spreadsheet that's going to be a perfect forecast and process and go to market strategy and advertising. You never know what you're doing when you start. You can have a hypothesis as to what you think is going to be right. But if you go in thinking that you know, then you basically know nothing. The best way is to think you know nothing and to just try something with a hypothesis and test it in a small way. And if it works, do it again. See if it still works, and then do it bigger, and then put more money behind it, and then get more people to do it, and they get more input, and then start building on this momentum until it stops working, and then do something else. It's really, if you've got the time and you've got enough money and you don't spend it all on harebrained big ideas that could just sink you, you're going to figure it out unless the competition does it faster, which is always a problem.
So this kind of gets back to intuition now. So then how does a person know what to take a risk on?
Well, you have prioritization, especially for startups, is the most important thing. You can work really hard, but if you're not working on the right thing, it doesn't matter. You have to prioritize. And for me, the best way is to not think about, what are the things that could basically thwart you or kill you, and work on them first. Because if there's anything existential, then if you do all the easy stuff first, and then you get to that one thing that you were hoping you wouldn't have to deal with, but you knew you were going to at some point, and you can't overcome it, you're dead. And all this time and money that you've spent before was wasted. Tackle that first in a small way and see if you can do it. For us, selling blinds online was the big thing. Would people do it? I started before Amazon even started in 1993. Amazon was 94. So I just wanted to see, would anybody buy any blind online? So I only had 3 products in 2 colors. That was it, to see if people would even do it. So they ended doing it, and now we're doing over $1 billion. So yeah, it definitely worked. But you need to start off with something small and just iterate and figure out, instead of what are those big things other than existential problems, what are some little things that I can test really fast? Not something that could have this giant outcome, because of course you want to do the things that are the easiest to do with the least amount of money, with the least amount of time, and the least amount of complexity to have the biggest upside. Well, I've got news for you. There are very few things like that. So what you can really have to focus on, things that are really fast, not a lot of money, not a lot of time or complexity, but have any potential, because you could be wrong. So the fact that you don't know about these things and you don't really know what's going to happen, you try it and you do a bunch of these furious experimentation. And one of these things is just going to like, wow, that worked way better than I thought it was going to be. And then that you do a lot of that. So to me, with a startup, think of all the little things that you can do and do them super fast and don't think that you have to have a perfect solution, because you're not going to know. And once you start, you'll figure it out and you'll hone it over time. It took us years to figure out how to really do this. And over time, we figured it out. And it was actually kind of fun. The fact that we didn't know anything was huge fun for us, because it was like this giant game. And we were figuring out all these things that people said we could never do. And it wasn't the shuffleboard and the ping pong and foosball and the free food that we had. It was the fact that we were doing things that people told us that we could never do, and we were proving them wrong, and we were becoming better than what we thought we could be. And that was gobs of fun, which enabled us to attract the best people, even though we were paying very little money, because they felt they were part of a big vision. They felt they were consequential, they were significant, because they were, because everybody was significant in the organization. And that's really all I'm talking about, is respect. When you respect people for what they can do, and you believe that they can always do more than what they say, and you give them the tools to do it, then you will be doing more, because everybody's going to be doing more and everybody's helping each other do more. Our turnover was only 8%. Even 3 years after we sold to Home Depot, virtually no one left for 3 years.
Wow.
Why? Because we were having fun. We were achieving things that were just so cool.
So this is great. I understand it. As a startup, I'm on board. Can we translate some of what you just said into a larger organization that has matrices and bureaucracies, et cetera, et cetera? I'm assuming there's different challenges with these larger organizations to bring in this entrepreneurial mindset that you just said. But could you speak to bringing in this type of experimentation into an already established organization?
Well, that was me going into Home Depot. When you have a really successful, well-run company like Home Depot, and you're doing 80 billion or 100 or 140 billion, there's some risk there. You don't want to take big risks, because it's such a risky proposition. But you can still take small risks. Why not? Take a certain portion of your budget, an R&D budget. What's $1 billion to Home Depot? What's 100 million, 500 million? It's nothing. So, but if the CEO, and I'm not saying this is the way it was at Home Depot, but if the people who are in charge don't believe in experimentation or whatever culture you're trying to do, it's not going to happen, because people always look to the person above them for signals as to what that behavior should be. What is the culture? Do we experiment or not? And if your direct supervisor doesn't do whatever this thing is that you want to do, it's going to be really hard to do it. So I would say, look at the people directly above you and directly above that person and see how they're behaving. And that'll give you a sign as to what you can do. If they're not doing what you want to do, then you can do it in a small way. Maybe you do it just within your department. Maybe you do it just within your pod, and start getting more comfortable, more conversant, and getting people within a smaller area of your company to experiment. Or again, I don't want to just say it's about experimentation. It could be about anything. And just try it and see how it works. And when you have some successes, you can tell people about it. In the meantime, just keep it to yourself and do a sort of a covert experiment yourself and see how it's going. And then show off your numbers, how well you did. In the meantime, stay quiet.
Yeah, exactly. But Jay, I could talk with you all day. I mean, this is fascinating. You've had a wonderful career. You've obviously, I want you to plug your book here in a second. But before I do and turn it over to you about how people can connect you and follow you, take a look at where we are today. What is this? This is July of 2022 when we're talking. The economy is going through a bit of a rocky start right now. We're kind of bouncing around all over the place. We've got the Great Resignation still, pushing down on companies. There's all sorts of stuff. Everybody sort of can fill in the blank, right? If you had to boil down your message in one sentence, given where we are today for companies, how would you describe what you want them to know?
Whoa, that's a big question.
And I didn't even give you a chance to prepare for this, but
you said so many things. But what's for anything, which is okay,
I know, right? This is great. But what's in your heart that you really want people to know right now?
I think people could always take more chances than they think. That that success is not about the achievement of some extrinsic goal. That success is about being in the process of getting better and helping everybody around you get better. And if you can just get a little bit better today and help somebody next to you get just a little bit better, then that's success. And if you have that type of view, then everything in the organization is going to get easier because everybody is going to be supporting each other. Everybody's going to care about the overall success of everybody, which means all the stakeholders, each other, your service providers, your consultants, your investors, your customers, your accountants, everybody. You're helping them get better. They will help you get better. And if you can just have a little, is it really too much to ask to have a little respect for people, to bring humanity back into the business? Why can't we do that? Yeah. I think we can. And I don't believe it being soft, squishy, or too idealistic. I know it worked with me, and we are doing amazing, maybe especially now that I'm not even there.
Well, Jay, I really love what you've been saying. I think that as I think about other systems out there, education, politics, government, et cetera, I always have this idea that business has a very large responsibility and large opportunity to create social change and to really affect the way our lives transpire and get better. And what I think what you're saying is very similar, that we have huge opportunities here. One little getting better at a time, if you would. Yeah.
Just get a little better. And then if you get better, just 0.25% a week, and everybody in the organization gets 0.25% every week, over a year, you've got like a 20, 25%, maybe 50% compounded per year change. Wow. That's a huge change.
Yes,
you don't have to change very much, but if you change often, it will compound. You will look in the rearview mirror and look back to where you were and go, I can't believe where we are now. I can't believe how fast we've grown. How did that even happen? And it's because you respected people and you respected the idea that you can be better.
I think, that's one thing that I'm going to take from this conversation is that when you hear people talk about making change, it's often on very large scale and sometimes overwhelming levels. Your message that I'm taking is just make a small change every day. And over time, it makes a huge difference. Jay, how can people connect with you and follow your career and what you're all about? Tell us a little bit more about your book and basically how we can follow you.
Well, LinkedIn is always good. jaysteinfeld.com. My website is good. The book Lead from the Core is available everywhere: Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Target, wherever great books are sold.
That's awesome.
And it was a Wall Street Journal bestseller, so the reviews have been awesome and
that's great,
gratifying. The main thing though about the book was I wrote it so that the people at blinds.com knew what built us, a lot of the themes that we talked about today, so that when I was not going to be there anymore, which I knew was going to happen one day, then they would have something to fall back on and say, this is what we did. Or, there'd be, when I'm not there, they're thinking, well, who was this guy and what did he do? Or did he do anything? And now
kind
they
of a
can
cultural archive.
Figure it out.
Yeah,
exactly. That was why I wrote it. Now I use it in the classroom. I teach around the country at different business schools. And if it will help anyone get better, then it will be a big success for me because I've helped one more person just get a little bit better.
Jay, you're a delight. Thank you so much for your time. I really wish you the best, and I hope that we can stay connected after this conversation.
I'd love that, Dean. Thanks for having me on the show.
You bet.
Thank you for listening to The Business of Intuition. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, rate, and review on Apple Podcasts, Google, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you'd like to learn more about Dean or Mission Facilitators Leadership, go to mfileadership.com. That's mfileadership.com.